go. Hi, everybody. I am Len Leatherwood, and I'm the president of Story Circle Network, and I am delighted that you're here today. We have someone who knows a lot about self-publishing with us, Cynthia Davidson. And Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you.
We're so happy you're here and you're going to share your expertise with all of us today. I'm going to take copious notes, I can promise you. I'll introduce Cynthia in a second. I want to just do a little housekeeping before we get started. One of those things is if you, I believe, Cynthia, is this correct? You want to wait until the end for people to ask questions?
Yes,
is that
unless
correct?
there's something urgent that they can't hear or can't understand. But it'll go a little smoother if they just put them in the chat box.
Okay, that sounds great. And then Liz, at some point, she'll read the questions for you. Okay, so if you have a question, be sure and then I believe you said you will take questions at the end. Is that correct?
Yes. Once we stop the screen sharing, I'll be able to see everybody.
No, you won't.
Oh,
you're not going to see everybody through the whole thing. I know it's pretty tough. So at that point, we'll go back about you can ask your questions again in chat, or you could raise your hand and we can allow you to speak. Okay, we can just but we'll talk about that. I've got to let my grandfather clock stop tolling.
For whom the bell tolls.
For whom the bell tolls. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. And then let me also say that in a couple of days, everyone will receive a recording of this, so you don't have to be maniacally taking notes. You will have this. We'll send it to each one of you, and it'll be in a YouTube. It'll be a YouTube recording, which means that it's just easier to navigate, and you can count on getting it. Okay. All right. So here we go. I will begin now. All right. Cynthia, hello. Happy you're here. Cynthia F Davidson, this is Cynthia's official bio, began offering workshops in person and online after her 2019 book, The Importance of Paris, won an independent publishing IPPY award. Cynthia is a former CBS News journalist, a longtime expatriate, and global management development pioneer. She now writes and teaches full-time, and she's on the board and faculty of Story Circle Network. We're very grateful for that. I got to see her in June at Susan Albert's celebration. She runs for Story Circle Network. She runs a comprehensive 8-week-long memoir overview course via Zoom, and she will tell you more about that later. That course covers everything from initial concept right through distribution on self-publishing. In 2021, she won a Life Writing Award and is currently working on 4 more books. So not 1 book, not 2 books, but 4. Cynthia is active in local Rhode Island writing groups, and she also does content editing and coaching. So Cynthia, the title of your webinar, obviously, Self-Publishing, What Is It, and Is It Right for Me and My Book? All right, Cynthia, I'm just going to get out of here and let you take over from here.
Thank you so much, Len. It's a pleasure working with you. I always
wonderful. Thank you.
Partnering. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming this evening by Zoom, and often wonder, when I first started working on my first book, I never imagined we'd have ways like this to do things. And so as we launch into the presentation tonight, I just want to remind everyone that you're figuring this out, what's right for you, whether, what is self-publishing. Take your time, and your solutions will be unique to you. So I don't want you to feel that you have to be in a hurry, because there's a lot to learn. And I think of some of my friends in the Midwest when I put this presentation together, who's used to say, you don't try to get 25 pounds of potatoes in a 20-pound sack, but I will be telling you probably more than you can digest. So this is another reason why I'm very glad that there'll be a video of this and that you'll have other opportunities. I still feel like I'm on a constant upward slope learning about self-publishing, because the target is changing every day while you're aiming at the target, and you're also changing. And I use these archers as examples here of you're trying to aim at telling your story and yourself, and doing it your way. And then you're also trying to learn about the publishing business world. And you're also trying to learn about your readers and your customers. And that's really what we're aiming to cover tonight in this presentation process, this sort of linked buildup of these rings in sort of let's call it in 3 dimensions. So I'm showing you this slide with this piece of artwork that looks a little bit like Miro inspired it, but I found it on online, and I'm not sure who the artist it was, but I sure hope to find out someday, because I like this. It sort of makes me resonate with how I felt when I was starting out. You have all these areas of influence and all these areas of knowledge, and how do you navigate between all these options that you have? Like my title here says, the overwhelm is real, and a real sense of adventure is required. If you cannot make this fun for yourself, it will become just too frustrating and too overwhelming. And I say that from serious experience of wanting to throw manuscripts across the room, and maybe even throw my laptop across the room a few times, because it's not easy. You'll be putting your toe in the self-publishing waters is really, it's good to have the lifelong learner hat on, or life vest on, if we're mixing our metaphors tonight, because the field is changing so fast. So let's take another look at these pieces we're going to sort of explore together this evening. So like I said a moment ago, you're aiming at a moving target as you and your book or books are developing. So remember that what you knew a year ago may already be out of date. And this is where I feel like having a background in the news business has helped me a little bit, because I'm expecting the change and I'm trying to always reorient myself. And when I think about what I knew when I first decided to write a book when I was 29 years old versus what I know today, there's no comparison. And, in another 5 years, there won't be any comparison to what we're going to talk about today. So I will show you where a lot of my sources are from, so that you can Google the information yourself. Thank goodness for the internet. You can get a hold of information a lot easier than you ever could before. So once again, we're going to look a little bit at yourself and your story, if they are right for self-publishing. Look at the publishing business and how you want to put yourself into it. And remembering always that your ultimate aim is to reach your readers and your customers. And before we go to the next slide, I just want to say there is nothing stopping you from writing your book in a Word document on your laptop, sending it to your local Kinko's, Staples, local printer, and having the document printed up and bound and being done writing your book. I really want to never forget to remind people, at one level, at the basic level, this is simple and it's doable. It has never been easier in the history of the world to get a book published than it is today. So you really do have that going for you. And going from that base to adding on whether, how many times you're going to rewrite your book, how fancy a cover you want for your book, and all these other things we'll touch on tonight. But I want to make sure everybody leaves here this evening feeling a little bit pumped about the fact that this is doable. And there are things you want to learn if you want to have it more crafted. But never forget, nothing is really stopping us from printing our own books right off a local printer with a local printer's help. Once we've written it, of course. All right, so know thyself, the publishing business, and your readers. I can't say enough that this is another full-time job on top of your writing job. And it helps to actually have a certain amount of time set aside each day, each week, where you sort of touch base with what's going on. Even touch base personally with the overwhelm factor. I know some days I got to the point where I just couldn't look at my book anymore. I didn't want to reread the content editor's comments on the gaps and the holes in my manuscript. It get to be a bit much, but at the same time that you're doing that, because ideally, while you're writing your story, you're thinking of the rest of these circles. You're thinking of the business and you're thinking of your readers. It's actually, it's nice to take a little break and think more about the business, the sort of nuts and bolts financial end, and your eventual readers and customers. And I'll say one thing else when I say know thyself, the publishing business, and your readers. If you're not already in a book club or a writing group, by all means, you must make a commitment to that, because being in a book club will teach you more and more about readers as customers, what they like, what they don't like. By all means, if whatever genre you're writing, I write memoir, but not only memoir. So I'm always reading reviews on Amazon and Bookreads, and by all means, have yourself an account at Goodreads, excuse me, so that you can see what readers are saying. Those are your future customers. You really do have to know how to satisfy them and what they're looking for in your demographic once you have your genre and your theme sort of organized. So really knowing yourself may also come down to an inventory of your skill set. I am never going to be the right person to learn how to format books or do the graphic design and covers and what have you. I know, again, know thyself. I know I need to hire a professional to do that, because I could write the nicest book, but nobody's going to read it if the cover doesn't look attractive. And that's sad, but true. Most people spend 3 to 5 seconds looking at a cover of a book, especially online, a place like Amazon, and they buy it or don't based on the cover, despite all the good efforts you may have put in it. So we'll just touch on various subjects tonight, because I do cover this in much greater detail in the course. But knowing yourself and knowing where to invest your careful budget, something like a cover is worth spending the money on. And knowing yourself, knowing whether or not, if you are a good artist, maybe your art belongs on the cover, but you'll need some professional feedback to decide that. All right, so I thought we would just dive into some examples here of real life people whose examples that I'm familiar with. And somebody like Veena Rao here, she's a good example of all the differences of somebody who, Veena Rao, and I'm giving you a picture here. She's in the upper left-hand corner. And I just really admire what she did. And she has recently, not long ago, done a webinar for Story Circle Network. That's how I met her and got her book and read it. But I want to read to you what she said about her publishing experience, because it's a good eye opener and a reality check for the rest of us. So she wrote, "I'm a brown immigrant female author with no MFA, no Ivy League pedigree. I taught myself to write, and I taught myself to write fiction after starting to work on my novel. It took me 10 years to complete that novel and find a publisher. Finding a literary agent was near impossible. I saw rejection letter after rejection letter, and my heart would sink after every email. But I was back at my computer the next day, reworking the manuscript. Over the years, I must have worked on a zillion drafts. Ultimately, I won a manuscript contest and a book deal hosted annually for women of color by my wonderful publisher, She Writes Press. Now, I just wanted to give you that as an example of somebody that was persevering, and despite a lot of what the traditional publishers would call handicaps, and she wrote a wonderful book that's very well received by her readers. And that's just one tiny example. The next person here going to the right, Billy Best, I get a kick out of her name. I met her through the National Association of Memoir Writers, which is a wonderful organization to belong to and join. Even the amount of free consulting, I would call it, that I get just from going to their Facebook page 2 or 3 times a week is worth joining even the Facebook group alone, because you learn about great graphic designers for books, not only memoir, but great content editors. So you want to really put yourself in the field of the folks that you want to be like. And Billy, here on the far right, is her how I made a huge mess of my life for couples therapy with a dead man. She has the most wonderful sense of humor, and I just get a kick out of her. And she also is not shy about showing her face, because as she shared with us on her Facebook page, she gets a like rate and an interaction rate on social media a lot more when her face is in the photo. That's just one little tip, one little takeaway from today, that you can't be shy about showing up, literally, and showing your face. How many of you have heard of Heather Cox Richardson? Most of us are reading her daily letter from an American. Actually, right next to her picture, I have her page as it looks like on Substack. And I wanted to mention Heather, who is, is a wonderful professor. She's an American history professor at Boston College. And she is, according to the Financial Times newspaper, she's making about $1.4 million a year by $5 subscriptions at a time from her Substack readers, subscribers. And I'm giving her as an example because this is a woman who had, I don't know, 5 books to her name already on American history. She's very well known for her background on the Civil War, for instance. And she started writing a regular letter, as she calls it, letters from an American, after Trump got into the White House. And she does a wonderful synthesis of the news and the newspapers, you know, the weighty ones, the fact-checked ones. And I'm telling you, she has tens of thousands of subscribers. So she is far out earning her money from through a subscription service than she ever made through her books. So I want to just give a little plug here for the fact that when I say publishing and when we think books, we have to remember that that's a little behind the times for where we are right now in the publishing industry. And someone like Heather Cox is a wonderful, Richardson is a wonderful example of where things are going and how they're forcing a reconsolidation in the publishing world, because that money goes straight to her. That's a wonderful thing about Substack. For any of you who've written blogs, Substack allows you to get paid for your blog. You just need to have your name out there and people who want to see your work. Patreon is another site where people who are writing, sometimes enough on Facebook or Instagram, manage to migrate their readers over to their Substack or Patreon website, and they maybe haven't even published a book yet. I have a couple of people I'm following who, again, no books yet to their name, but they're making steady good money with subscriptions. So don't forget things like that. And down in the bottom here on the lower right-hand side, I wanted to share our wonderful leader and founder of Story Circle Network. She really gave a wonderful example to me of how a person can continue to grow even though she came in, she's in her 80s now, she definitely aced the traditional publishing world. She has over 125 books to her name, and many of them were New York Times bestsellers. She even ghost wrote things like the Nancy Drew mysteries after the original author died. But I want to share from her email today, Susan Wittig-Albert. I had to double check my facts on her self-publishing. Again, this is a woman who, already had her costs covered, shall we say, by earnings in the traditional publishing world, but she ventured out, and I'm glad she did. So she now has over a dozen author-published novels. That's what she calls it, self-published, author-published. So she has more than a dozen, plus 6 linked novellas, and those are boxed sets, 2 sets of them, 3 novellas each, which is another interesting way to go today, and the whole idea of novellas for busy people. She started author publishing in 2012 when she couldn't get a traditional publisher interested in her manuscript, A Wilder Rose. This is the Laura Ingalls story. And since then, happily, she sold over 90,000 copies of A Wilder Rose, and she can thumb her nose at the traditional publishers who passed by on the chance to ride her coattails, if you will, and her profits on that manuscript alone. And last month alone, she published another author-published book, The Darling Dahlias and the Red Hot Poker. She has a whole more than one series of mysteries and things, and she just is a wonderful example of who we can be when we grow up and we're in our upper 80s and we're still acing it in the publishing world. So I'll move on to the next slide here, just as we round out our examples before we go. And you'll notice I'm already mixing a little bit the self and the personal story with the publishing deals and the readers. I don't know if any of you have heard of Mona Eltahawy, but I'm using her as a wonderful example of a person who really broke through from the journalist world. And I'm very fond of her because we both grew up in Saudi Arabia. She's Egyptian, but she is a heck of a feminist. And even though she had both her arms broken by the Egyptian police during her protests for democracy, she's really fearless. And the very first chapter of my first memoir, I quote her. I keep up with her on Instagram and things. And this is another example that the authors that you love and the people whose work you follow, you can start to have some kind of a personal relationship with them thanks to social media. And, you may need them down the road to write a blurb for your book or give you a review or something, and sort of earn the right to sit at, if you will, an old concept, but nevertheless still true, that people need to see your name out there as you make your way and get known for whatever your subject matter is. So Mona Eltahawy is a great example. And at the moment, she's being published by a company called Tramp Publishing. It's 2 women in Ireland. And they actually don't take any submissions from the US or from Canada because they're very focused on publishing other voices and things. And I'm also giving you her book, 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls. I've had several copies of that book, and every time I loan it to somebody, I never get it back. So obviously people love it and love her work, but she's a great example of somebody that's carved out a niche for herself in our publishing world, and somebody, depending on your area of expertise, you may or may not want to hook up with, join forces with. And here finally at the bottom, I did a quick screen capture of my own book as it appears on Amazon, and my own Facebook page. And just as reminders to you that you've got to get out there and play the social media game. There's almost no way to get distribution, even if you wanted to go to a traditional publisher. I remember when She Writes Press, the founder Brooke Warner, I asked her about publishing my book. Here, I'll just hold it up for you. I guess you could see it. And she, before, when I wanted to show her the manuscript, the first question she asked me was, do you have 5,000 friends on Facebook? And I was speechless. I said, no, I probably have like 230 friends on Facebook. She said, well, I'm not even going to read your manuscript until you have 5,000 friends on Facebook. And that was back in 2016. And that was a bit of a wake-up call for me to get with the program. And I have since found out, whether you're self-publishing or even trying to get a traditional publishing deal with a literary agent, they won't look at your work either unless you have some kind of social media platform, because it's crowded out there, and they want you to help sell your book. They won't be doing it all for you. So might as well get on with it. So what we're going to focus on next, after those examples of personal, people and their stories and sort of evaluating their niche and things, we're going to go deeper into the business of publishing. And literally, I like the idea that public and publishing are kind of related, maybe at their Latin root of the word, because you really do have to develop a public persona. And this includes getting used to having fans that you don't personally know that love your writing and love your work enough to help spread it by word of mouth. And in the past, again, we could lean on traditional publishers to do more of that with their relationships with newspapers and things, but that's gone by the wayside too, to a great extent. So going public today and treating publishing as a business is really important. And I would say any one of you listening tonight who have actually run a business or been very active in running someone else's business and understands costs and budgets and goals and action steps and whatever are going to be ahead of the game at this level of aiming at the target. And I'll show you a little bit what I mean in the next slide. I think it's pretty stunning if you think about what's happened to the publishing business. It has gone through so much consolidation and reconsolidation of late. And I'll just give you these examples. If you're still thinking of trying to do it the traditional way, Amazon, the 800-pound gorilla, some people call it, has completely disrupted the publishing business. And we all maybe have heard the term the big six, Random House, Penguin, Hachette, Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, Macmillan. This little diagram, I love things in the round, as you could probably already tell. And this shows you the relationship that these entities have. So if you were to try to get your book published by one of them, to just have a sense of this crowded field that you would be entering and why they would have certain expectations of you as fulfilling a sort of defined formula or slot that they sell and distribute to, because you would want to match those things up. If you're a mystery writer, you want to go with a company that's known for marketing mysteries. But if you're going to be marketing your own mysteries, you would have a different approach. So the idea that down here on the chart in the notes I made for you, not only to have a look at who the world's biggest publishers are today, but the fact that in the US, 55% of all book sales are via Amazon. So whether we like Jeff Bezos or not, we have to deal with him. And, as self-publishers, author publishers, we can leverage his reach and quibble a little bit about the percentage that goes to Amazon. But it's a much better deal than the percentage that would go to us with a traditional publisher. Let me just go to the next slide to show you what's happened since. Hang on a second. I'm moving this again. Oops. I don't know why it's not doing it. All right. Malcolm?
You you might want to.
There it went. There it went. I skipped one. There we are. Okay. Thank you, dear. So what happened since 2012 when Susan Wittig Albert also decided to just go at some of her things on her own? So post 2020, now we have Simon and Schuster are buying them up. Excuse me, Simon and Schuster are being sold to Penguin Random House for $2 billion. And actually this triggered an antitrust case by the Department of Justice because they thought this was just going to be unfair advantage in the marketplace. And knowing things like Houghton Mifflin Harcourt was sold to HarperCollins, all of this, as I say at the bottom here, do you want to be worrying about this kind of news? And this is just a reminder, a reality check of how much these pictures change. And I will just tell you one example of a woman who did, she was very happy to get a literary agent for her manuscript, very happy to get a traditional Big Five publisher to do her book. They put her book out. COVID came along and she couldn't do any of the bookstore marketing in-person things that they'd scheduled for her. The book was basically taken off the shelves because there wasn't a lot of push for it. We were in a pandemic anyway, which is already unusual, but still. And now they are basically shelved her book. And she is stuck with knowing, okay, I didn't make enough money for them with the first time they tried me out the gate. Now she has to exercise the buyback clause in her contract to get the rights back to her manuscript so she could self-publish it and try to still get it out there. That stunned me as an example. I did not realize that you could end up in that situation after you thought you were happy to get picked up by a big publisher. But that's just another reality check for us to remember. The pressure is on these big guys. They're very much corporate thinkers, return on investment. If you're not returning on their investment, they're going to table you pretty quick and give the attention and time and money and PR investment to the ones who are bringing it in. So the harsh reality of that kind of overhead. Okay, I don't know again why it's not letting, there we are. So let's just look at one more slide about the business here to just, again, have these reality checks. Statista is a wonderful site to go to when you want neutral feedback on any kind of industry, including publishing industry. So I thought I just would do a little screen grab and show you one example of their statistics. Okay, between at the moment, what does an ISBN mean? The International Standard Book Numbers. This is how libraries and publishers know your book. It's a little bit like having a passport number or a control number. And I'm giving this as a first example because this is an interesting indicator of self-publishing. So the idea that more and more of them are, 1.67 million ISBNs were assigned to self-publishing titles, up from 1.2 million in 2017. Each of us that go into the self-publishing business, we do want to buy our own ISBN numbers. They're not that expensive. You can buy 10 at a time. And even for the Library of Congress catalog, you must have an ISBN number. You cannot get on the shelf of a bookstore or on the shelf in a library without an ISBN number. And I'll just give you a little heads up here. When you upload your manuscript to Kindle, for example, on Amazon, and right next to the slide here on the top, I'm showing you what it looks like when you go to Kindle Direct Publishing. Some of you may have actually already been to Amazon and seen where you would upload your book. You will get a prompt from Amazon to choose an ISBN number, and they will happily provide you one. And if you are a newbie, you will not understand that you are giving away some of your copyright powers if you let Amazon give you an ISBN. So buy your own ISBNs and put them in yourself when you do put your manuscript up. And you will need different ISBNs for your Kindle book, a different one for your print on demand book, and a different one for your audio book. So all of you'll need more than one. Anyway, so the slide under the Statistica one is from the Readsy blog. That's another very interesting blog for author publishers, self-publishers. This is just a very quick nine-point rundown on what you would have to do to upload your manuscript to Amazon. It looks pretty simple. It's deceptively simple looking. And I had my book formatter editor person help me with all of this because I'm not the nerd techie person, but I respect the heck out of those folks. But this is just a reality check again on the world you would be entering if you haven't already decided to self-publish. And it's not rocket science, but if you haven't done it before, it feels overwhelmingly complicated. So make sure you get help the first time out the gate. And the last slide on, last item on this slide is about audiobooks. When I was first writing my memoir, The Importance of Paris, I never imagined doing an audiobook, but I did realize while I was really working heavily on the book that I was listening to a lot of audiobooks. So I should think about whether I would do an audiobook. And luckily, especially for the memoir genre, a lot of customer readers do like to hear the author themselves read a memoir. And unless your voice really doesn't lend itself to such a project, I would strongly recommend, if you are thinking about self-publishing, remember the audio aspect of your self-publishing, because that is the fastest growing segment in publishing right now. And because Amazon bought Audible and people have subscriptions to Audible, you will get a percentage of anybody who chooses to listen to your book through Amazon. And that is a pretty nice deal that you can't get quite the same way anywhere else. I mean, Jeff Bezos and his marketing guys and gals certainly think about all these aspects, and they make it very attractive. So make sure that you include an audio version of your book. All right, our next slide. We're at the third level here. We've talked about yourself, your story, and given some examples of that. We've talked a little bit about the publishing industry, so you're getting a sense of context, how self-publishing fits in with the traditional publishers. And then customers. Reach your readers by aiming for the right audience. I cannot say this enough. When I first started my book, I just wanted everybody to like it. I didn't want to limit myself, but I learned the hard way. This is why I teach other people, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. I learned the hard way. You do have to aim at a certain demographic if you're going to have serious sales. So one thing that is a good indicator for you if you're going to do self-publishing is actually the reading that you already do, the book clubs or organizations you already belong to, which are areas of interest, because those are the natural place to start. I wanted now to give you a sort of cold shower bath, ice water bath in TikTok. I don't know how many of you have TikTok accounts. I know I've mentioned Instagram and Facebook, but there are a lot of social media apps out there. And I do not have an account yet on TikTok. My nurse daughter does. She said Facebook is for old people now. Sorry, I'm just quoting her. I still think we're young, but the younger demographic is moving away from Facebook. So if you are aiming to reach young readers, you will have to go to where the eyeballs of young readers are, and TikTok is one of the places, not the only place. I'm going to play you a couple of minutes of this compilation of book talk. This is pretty influential now. The big publishers are paying a lot of attention to TikTok, and they definitely pull out all the stops to try to get the media influencers or the social media influencers to feature their book, tell their book clubs about it, and their friends. So here we go. I won't play the whole 10 minutes, but then there's a tiny bit of profanity in this. But again, we're going out of our comfort zone on purpose.
Is today a good day to die? We were all villains in the beginning. She'd never killed before tonight. It took 7 years to get the letter right. If I cannot be better than them, I will become so much worse. I think of the night in the park, it was getting dark and we stayed up for hours. What a time, what a time, what a time. She was addicted to the dark, she's 95. Rough sex on the bedroom floor, hop in the shower, she begging for more. She not serve on the hotel door, waking the night.
What do you think Wackus Bonkus? Tell them. Who? You naughty Wackus Bonkus.
My reading journal came in today.
These girls know that I'm next. I sent it back to her boyfriend with my handprint on her ass shit. Sitting talking, we taking notes. Girl, I've fallen for you. Oh my God, baby, baby, don't you see? I got everything you need.
I'm a ghostwriter.
For online dating,
I write the messages,
and my clients need their dates in person.
but I've fallen for my client's date. The chemistry wasn't great in person.
But when we were texting, she seemed like a real catch.
Then I found out that he has a ghostwriter too.
And I know her.
Now the real question is, will we have any chemistry in person? And that's ghosting by Tash Skill.
Of three things, I'm absolutely certain. 1, I am mentally ill. 2, smutty romance books work better than antidepressants. And 3, I am unconditionally and irrevocably in need of a chiropractor.
Not easy love, but I only feel the same. Baby, feel the same. Step on up to this. Step on up to this. Step on up to this crazy love. I'm classy, but I don't mind if you get at me. So you get nasty, just the way that you like.
People think I'm obsessed with this, but I'm okay with it. I am obsessed with it. And I think this is an obsession that doesn't hurt anyone.
I hate all that. So I guess I'll just
Hold my breath and count to 10. Why do I always fall for fictional men?
One day, you're going to meet someone who appreciates you for who you are. I mean, there's 7 billion people on the planet. And one of them is going to climb up on a mountain.
Diamond blue, baby, New York City. Never was there ever a girl so pretty. Beautiful, being love.
All right, we're going to stop that video. I will actually go to the next slide. All right. I just, before we dive into this slide, I want to say that video, like it or not, is taking over the entertainment and publishing field too. As you may have already realized, the same thing is happening to books that happened to in the music industry, the publishing industry, and the music industry, and the film industry. The whole idea of indie and mixing up your own tapes in your garage and trying to get away from the corporate model to make a living doing your creative thing is in all the creative fields, not only publishing. So, and these merge and purge each other. So think about doing a video about your book. Even when you have a book launch party or what have you, you are going to have to continue to remember that we're in the digital age, ready or not. I'm on the fence a little bit about this, but I see what's going on around me, and here I am using video to reach you, so to speak. And I just wanted to give you some stark statistics on this, so you know I'm not just making it up. 70% of web traffic, what's traveling over the internet, is coming from, is on demand by mobile users. So remember, whatever you're going to serve up with your book, your marketing, your community of readers or what have you, they're going to be getting it on their phone for the most part. So it has to look good on a phone. And even for your own personal WordPress website, for instance, if you're a self-publisher, make sure that if it's inside WordPress, it will automatically resize to a phone versus someone looking at it on a laptop. And this is one of those crucial things about keeping up with the times. People are getting a lot of what they're getting on their phones. So be ready for that. As I said, 70% of web traffic is coming from mobile users, and 63% of all mobile traffic comes from video consumption. So there's another reminder to us about how important video is. And also, when we're thinking about reaching our readers and our fans, they're craving what they call personalization in marketing terms. So they want to feel like they have a relationship with you, the author. And for people who are a bit shy and retiring, this is a real challenge, because you could be shy and retiring in the old days because your publishing company could make the buzz and noise for you in the marketplace. But today, more and more, I notice even in my library book club, people want to know more about the writer, who wrote this book, what's happening in their life as we read their work. So being aware of that. And I wanted to also just give you another statistic here. Print publishing revenue dropped by 30 billion in the last decade. So over the past 10 years, they've lost 30 billion of revenue that they were depending on from print. And this is because things moved to Kindle, and we all can now have a Kindle ebook reader on our phone. That's where I get my stuff. And also I listen to Audible on my phone when I'm doing housework, cooking, driving in the car. So just be prepared for that. Just like podcasts and things have overturned what used to be magazine articles and people who read them. So digital publishing revenue, and again, we're talking about digital, in the US was $10 billion last year. And digital publishing revenue worldwide is $122 billion. I mean, it's staggering numbers when you think about it. So I just want to remind us that when we're talking about publishing, and even though the name of this webinar was about, you know, whether this self-publishing is right for you and your book, I want to broaden that to think about you and your work, not just your book. because your work may involve writing a blog, writing a newsletter, having a vlog, the vlog meaning it's a video log, publishing to subscribers like Heather Cox Richardson does, and audiobooks, having an audiobook. So when we say publishing, remember you're including all these things. And you're competing in that field. So let me go to what's on the pertinent slide here that we have in front of us. What is right for you and your book defends readers' rights. And I want you to think about the relationship between the word right, like what feels right, what fits you, and the right of readers to read and the right of writers to write. Because you have the right to be heard in the marketplace. Your story has as much a right to be out there as anybody else's. And I really just going to make a little plug here for social justice, that especially those of us who have stories to tell that maybe are multicultural, multi-ethnic, multiracial, who knows. But I want us to be super conscious about our choices, because in the larger context, with the banning of books today and a lot of scary things that seem to be going on about information and truth, especially if you see yourself as a truth teller in your writing, you have to think about things like what's going to happen to your book in the library, or even what's going to happen to your work when you may personally no longer be here. That's something I've had to think about. Even in terms of my copyrights to my things, I can leave that as an inheritance for my kids. So this idea that Authors Alliance, there are several wonderful organizations. We go into this in great detail in my course about things that you ought to belong to if you're a self-publisher, that will extend your sense of community and belonging in the group as a self-publisher. So I wanted to show you something that was very current from this month when I went to the Authors Alliance. And just this month, they've been trying to support an effort to restore balance to the ebook market. I don't know how many of you get your ebooks straight from your library lending system, but the publishers, the big five, do not want to share that much revenue with the libraries. So there's always been a bit of a contest going on here for the eyeballs and loyalty of the readers. And I know sometimes we're limited from reading new books by self-published authors because they're not available at the library. And sometimes I saw a statistic that book clubs generally spend 47 cents a year on books for their book club because they're borrowing them from the library. So if you're writing a book and you're hoping to get book clubs to read it, you will have to market directly to the book clubs to get them to buy your book from you and maybe loan it around or something if money is an issue, because it will probably not be available in their library. So this is another hurdle to think about as a self-publisher. But the idea that the future and what's going to happen to our products when we're gone is something that we will be part of, that changing dynamic and that changing target that we're trying to aim at. So let's go to the next slide. This idea of what is right for me and my book versus you and your book. When I was publishing The Importance of Paris, I set up a Facebook page, and I'm just giving you a screen capture of the page that I have. And again, I can't do everything. I'm one person, and I pay for help once in a while, but I have to watch my budget. And so I'm always experimenting with what will get the eyeballs to the page, and knowing, having learned now even from marketing these courses as well as and webinars as well as my book, I'm learning that people have to see something at least 7 times sometimes before they take action. And to me, that felt like I was being too pushy or whatever, but I'm starting to accept the reality of the marketplace. And we just have to get over some of our inhibitions about things like that. And if you're going to be a self-publisher, you're going to have to be bold. You're going to have to push out your comfort zone. And then I shared with you here, would I, could I, should I write a memoir? This is the name of my course. And funny enough, when I came out with my book in 2019, I did not imagine that one of the things that would happen would be so many people asking me, how did you do that? And me saying the same thing over and over. And I said, listen, why don't you all come to my house? We'll get around the dining room table and I'll tell everybody the same thing at the same time instead of repeating myself. And that turned into these the courses that I do now, even for Story Circle Network. And it's been a lot of fun. And I wanted to give this as an example because I think it would be perhaps unwise as a self-publisher, I say this from personal experience, to expect to make a living off the first book that you publish. I think that would put too much pressure on yourself and it would be unrealistic. But what might be realistic is thinking, okay, I'm going to have to invest some money in getting editing, graphic design, book formatting, lessons to learn to write a better book, all of that to get my first book product finished. But if the book does well, I might be able to recoup some of those costs by sharing what I've learned. And believe me, I saw a recent statistic, something like 82% of Americans believe they have a book in themselves. So there is a huge market of people hungry to learn, hungry to come to workshops. So the per dollar investment that you make in writing your book or your books, hopefully more than one, you may not recoup them directly from sales of the actual book. And I really want to say that more than once so that you don't feel discouraged by the fact that to get traction and to be in there and have people see your name and to be asking you about your next book and stuff takes a lot of work to get there. Like I said at the beginning of this, you can write your Word document, format it, send it to any printer, Kinko's, Staples, go there and get your book, your bound book, but who is going to buy it? And so that's this challenge that we all have. How do we cross the distance between our story and our readers who are going to love it? And that's really what learning the business is about. So let me go to the next slide because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions because I'm hoping you have a lot of them. And this is my final slide. And again, bears repeating, it has never been easier to publish a book and to use social media. So I really want that to be the takeaway, in addition to maybe a sense of overwhelm that you might have about, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn. And I'll read this little quote out loud because I'm not sure it's visible to everybody. The font size large enough. And this is from Brianne Alfonso. She writes for electricliterature.com, which is a wonderful place for those of us who are learning more. Quote, self-publishing may be tough, but as an alternative to traditional publishing, it is exactly what we need to give little voices a chance to grow loud. Many of the big names that float around now got their start with self-published literature. They are proof that going the self-publishing route now can lead to greater things down the line. And this is from a little article called 11 Books That Prove There's Nothing Wrong with Self-Publishing. And the idea of waiting around to try to paper your writing room with rejections before you finally land a literary agent, you could already have a book published, and that's certainly more proof that you are 100% committed to doing this than waiting and waiting. I think let's say if I wanted my next book to be published by a traditional publisher for some reason, instead of getting 60% of what I get when I sell my book, I'd get $1 a book maybe if the traditional publisher sells it. The finances here are very interesting. But if I go to a traditional publisher now with a successfully published award-winning book, they'll listen to me. I might even be able to negotiate a better deal for myself and retain the right of ownership to my copyright in case the publisher doesn't do as good a job as both of sides expect. And I would still own my book and I could walk away without losing my manuscript's rights or the rights to my manuscript. So that's really something worth considering. Okay, shall we open it up to questions, and do I need to close the screen? And maybe before I close the screen, if I see in the chat room here, how much money are we talking about here? Let's go into that. Shall we close the screen? Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, you can stop sharing and then it'll just be your face up on the screen.
All right, and then maybe, but like you said, I still won't be able to see the others. That's hard for me.
But if people want to raise their hand, they can ask their questions directly. So you'd be able to hear their voice. So if someone has a
Okay.
question and wants to raise their hand, I'll pop
Yes.
it, just let them know that they can speak.
All right, here's one of the questions. It's a good one. One that I wished I'd thought a lot more about when I first started. How much money are we talking when self-publishing a novel? Wow, that is a great question, because you can do it modestly or you can go for broke, and only you will know your tolerance for risk level. You can spend a lot of money getting all the bells and whistles for publishing, designing, paying to have it appear in trade periodicals. I mean, there are a lot of places that are happy to take your money and may or may not lead to directly to sales. But just to do the book, I think by the time you pay for a content editor, by the way, all these functions I'm mentioning, you can just Google cost of content editors and you'll get the rough ratio, top ones to, not so highly acclaimed ones. So you'll need a content editor to read through your book, and you'll have to pay one. I paid $700 to have the fourth draft of my book read by the publisher, Brooke Warner of She Writes Press. They do around 200 women's memoirs a year. They're a standout in the field of women's memoirs. They have what you call a hybrid publishing model, and you could easily spend $15,000 with them. It doesn't only have to be memoir. They also publish novels, but they do a lot of things for you, everything from your photograph to your book design and all that. I decided I could not afford their fees. And having run my own business, I know a little bit about the markup between the person who does the job for you and the overhead of the company and all that. And I said, I want to do more than one book. So I want to find the graphic designer and the book formatting editor persons myself, because I will want to give them more work down the road. And so that was what I did. But it's still, I easily spent $3,500 on those functions to get a really good cover, to get all the formatting. My book has photographs inside. It has, let me show you, sort of just to get a sense of what an award-winning book would include. I have, and again, luckily my designer editor is a wonderful artist. She did a timeline for me in my book. Because a lot of things happen in the Paris of the Middle East, not just the Paris, France. She did me a map to help orient my readers, because many of them have not been outside the United States. And I shared this in a Monday night memoir workshop, but this could apply to something other than memoirs too, because when Kirkus, a trade magazine, reviewed my book, they said, a richly told memoir that's steeped in history. There is a lot of history in my book, and it was getting in the way of me telling the story. And thank goodness I landed on a good editor who had done a lot of PhD theses, typing them up for people. And she said, you can do this as footnotes, you can footnote the additional historical stuff. And that was a godsend to me. And I would not have thought of that myself. I needed a professional editor to come up with that. So that's just an example of where I had to spend money that, even if I tried to put a budget together at the beginning, how would have I known to budget for that? So I think you have to have a tolerance for learning as you go, making mistakes, recovering from your mistakes, not letting one bad reader or one bad feedback session spoil it for you. Take it to heart, develop a thicker skin. This is something that being on social media has definitely helped me with, as I did follow her advice, Brooke Warner's advice to get 5,000 friends on Facebook, because there's a lot of bumper cars, a little of this, a little of that in social media. It can get a little rough and tumble out there. But I've developed a thicker skin and become known for speaking out on certain issues and things and taking my licks, and also actually finding that my readers and my community sometimes come to my defense. I don't even have to defend myself. So these are the kind of relationships you want to look for as a self-publisher, author, publisher, your tribe out there. Okay, here, this is a good. Janet asks, how do you begin to obtain 1,000 Facebook followers? I don't have more than 250. Janet, you're exactly where I was when I was dumbfounded by Brooke Warner saying you have to have 5,000. It took me a year and a half to curate my friends list. And one of the ways you do it is you can go to the author pages of people on Facebook, go to your favorite writers pages on Facebook, join Facebook groups for writers, especially self-publishers. You'll start to see who shows up regularly. Click and ask to friend them, but be very purposeful and thoughtful as you're making friends in the social media world. I'm following a lot of different authors nowadays. Rebecca Solnit, not all of them write memoirs and things, because I'm interested in more than memoir, but you reach out to people. You can be following Cheryl Strayed, who wrote Wild. You can be following Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. All these breakaway books that change the mold that the traditional publishers had, that only celebrity memoirs sell. Books by regular people like Cheryl Strayed, or a great example. They earned millions of dollars for the publishing companies. I hope I've answered Janet's question. Take your time. And since Facebook bought Instagram, if you have an Instagram account and you're linking them, some of your Facebook posts will show up on Instagram and make it a little less tedious to maintain two outlets, because the demographics on Facebook are not the same as the demographics on Instagram. So just build slowly from people whose work you like and people who are a little bit further ahead than you are in this process. Lucy asked, I missed the name of the Facebook group you mentioned as being so helpful in connection with Betty. Yes. This, and the second part is also a great question. The Facebook group is the National Association of Memoir Writers. National Association of Memoir Writers, if you're writing memoir. And there are many other good, if you do Google searches for top groups, social media groups, fill in the blank, top mystery writers groups, top romance writers groups, young adult fiction groups, you can identify these folks. Now, the second part of Lucy's question is, come on. Facebook, excuse me, Amazon, who am I kidding? Can be uploaded to Amazon for free, but the challenge is going to be reaching the readers. So getting a book up on Amazon is easy. Getting it sold is hard. So putting a book on Amazon is not a marketing plan either. You will still have to drum up and link readers to it and what have you. But I do not think you would have to. I have not had an example, Lucy, where someone had to buy back their ISBN from Amazon. And as long as it wasn't an issue for some other reason, if Lucy can ask me further dial down on her question, what kind of book was it and why, and is she disappointed with what they have done or not done? Because Amazon does have things and just as Facebook and Instagram all have marketing plans where you can agree to spend, fill in the blank, $3 a week, $300 a week, whatever your budget will allow to get your book in front of eyeballs. So you want to be very smart about that by seeing what shows up in your news feed, whether it's irritating you. Just being in the digital world, in the social media world, will give you some finesse with dealing with things, because you don't want to irritate people. You want them to be happy to see you and your name. Len asks, are there certain types of books that sell better that are self-published? Wonderful question, and I should have looked that up somehow statistically. I know romance novels, oh my goodness, more and more people are doing self-publishing in that, historical romance and things too. But I cannot tell you exactly which ones. I know a lot of memoir writers, when you say sell better, if you're strictly talking about the financials, sort of cost versus earnings, you'd have to break that down in terms of all of the costs that went into the book. So it's not a simple way to find out, but you could still Google that. I would definitely, Len, Google which self-published books sell better or sell the most. Here's another good question. What is the best way to find an editor? Oh my goodness. How do you find a partner for life? You get out there and meet a lot of people. Well, that's part of it. Yes, finding an editor, I think there will be a little bit of a trial and error. One of my first editors was a woman that taught a course on Writer's Digest, a very old organization, been around since forever. And she was good for me at the level that my manuscript was at that time, but she couldn't have taken me to the next level. And this is really important, and where I will make a distinction between vanity presses and self-publishing. Vanity presses, and that's the old version, back when you still had to typeset manuscripts, and it was nothing like it is today, digitally publishing. But a vanity press really was not caring that much about being literary, obviously. They were caring about the money that they were going to be paid by the author to publish their book. And the old-fashioned vanity presses, if you read most of those books, and there are vanity presses today too that are happy to take $5,000 from you to format and publish your book, which you're free to then sell. But they will not make you write and rewrite and write a really good book. And I heard this from our librarian friend on Monday, that the self-publishing books that they want to have at the library are what we call first drafts. This is where, when I first wrote my book, it was 360 some pages, and I thought I was done because I had gotten it all down, right? Oh no, that's just the first draft. And this goes greatly into how to find beta readers, because if you do not have beta readers read your drafts, you will not get the crucial feedback you need to hit the sky's the limit audience level of those circles that we looked at in the charts and the slides. To reach your readers, you're going to need a lot of feedback, and your beta readers would be people. I got beta readers from my book club. I got beta readers from my writing group. I belong to more than one writing group. That's the best place. You want to get people who read enough. People who are also writing give you a different kind of feedback than people who only read and are not trying to become a writer. And you need both kinds of feedback. Take it all with a little grain of salt. Think about where they're at with their writing when they give you feedback on your writing. But don't be shy to ask for it. I spent a little extra money with my first book because I went to the trouble of paying to have it formatted to give it to a book club to read as beta readers. And this was a long-standing book club, but they had well-traveled people. And because a lot of my book was about life overseas, because as you know, I was an expatriate for half my life. I needed people who were well-traveled also to give me feedback. And so I found them in this book club, and I decided to pay to have my book formatted. They still got an electronic version, so I hadn't paid to have it printed on paper, but it was invaluable, the feedback that I got from them. So that's just one example of a solution that I found for finding beta readers. But when you ask your family to read your book as a beta reader, you might not get the tough feedback. People say, oh, I love it, or whatever, but they can't tell you why they love it or what they loved. And you need people who will, like the beta readers I had in that book club, one of them who's Jewish and actually from a Holocaust family, survivor family, she said in my book that I gave the most well-balanced descriptions of Arab and Palestinian wars and the issues between them of any writer she'd ever read. And to me, that was a big compliment, because I have, grown up in Arabia and Lebanon and ended up marrying a Moroccan-born Israeli, my first husband, and I did have to straddle all the propaganda I'd had as a child and the Arab side of things, and then starting to travel to Israel every year for 12 years. Whoa, so that was in my writing, but unless someone had enough knowledge of both sides, they wouldn't have known that that was well done. Do you pay beta readers? No, you don't pay beta readers. I never did. And if the beta reader asks to be paid, you may want to ask them why, if they consider themselves some uber beta reader. But generally speaking, I would say reciprocating is how you get beta readers. If you have asked somebody to read your manuscript or a draft of your manuscript, you better be ready to offer to read theirs too, or their collection of short stories or essays or whatever it is they want to publish. Fair's fair. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, and we do need those relationships and people who will tell us. Also the content editing, which is very different from the line editing. And I'll make a little plug for line editors, because those folks go through and make sure the commas and the apostrophes and the grammar are correct. Content editors don't do that. Content editors look at the arc of your character development. They look at your plot lines. They look at how you wrap things up. Did you satisfy the readers? Did everybody that came on stage in your book make a satisfactory exit so that the reader's not left wondering what happened to so-and-so? Or, content editors are a different breed from the line editors, and they charge different fees too. So you want to be aware of that. I can't believe how fast the time is going. Any other questions? Can we open it to audio questions as well? I realize we're...
I have one question of someone just based on the last part of the discussion. She wants to know what a beta reader is.
Oh, great question. Because again, we throw around these terms because we live in the author land, and we forget that the people who didn't cross the border into author land yet have a different lingo. I would say that a beta reader is someone who's reading for more than just pleasure. And a beta reader is an early reader, just like the beta version of software is not quite ready for prime time. A beta reader knows they're reading a manuscript that's not quite ready for prime time. So they will give you the benefit of the doubt that you're going to improve the manuscript, but they are willing to read, let's use the word raw. They're a raw manuscript, knowing that you're going to work it with their feedback. So a beta reader is someone who reads thoughtfully and thinks about what they read and can tell you or write back to you where they got confused in the story, or what they wanted more of, or what they wanted less of. And that's a little different from your readers who might, after your work is published, one of my readers, Tamara, she said, I wanted to throttle you in your story because you didn't leave that man sooner. And this is one of the things with writing memoir. These are intimate personal stories. And of course, all of our flaws and foibles are on view. And this is also what makes our readers continue to turn the pages. If it all seems so easy and we just winged our way through with no problems, who'd want to read a book that about that. They want to read about the hardships. They want to read about the nights you spent crying. They want to read about the time you considered throwing yourself off the bridge. That is good reading, not, oh, everything was fine, and then I went home. No, good reading is what happened to you? How did you overcome? What happened to you? All of us are going through a lot, especially with the pandemic and political situation, and now the war in Ukraine. People have a lot on their plates. They want to know how other people handled life when they had a lot on their plates. That's part of the selling power of your story. How about some more questions?
I have a question from Linda. That
Yes.
is, how do you know the difference between a vanity press and someone like BookBaby that you also pay?
Very good question. There's another one called Biblio something. If you Googled, literally, you could Google vanity presses, you would get a list. And you could also Google vanity press scandals. I do this regularly. That's my journalism, my investigative journalist hat, because I want to see who's in hot water for taking people's money and maybe not even publishing their book. They got your $5,000 and then they never return your phone calls. You do not want that to happen to you. Then you could Google hybrid publishers. That's why I put that word in one of the slides. Hybrid publishers agree to do some of the work for you and with you for a fee, but it's not the same as just taking your manuscript, formatting it, and publishing it. And when I say publishing it, I mean printing it. Let me show you something that I realized working with Amazon. I never paid Amazon a dime until I paid for the retail cost of my, the wholesale cost per copy of my book. And that to me was really important with my budget. So working with Amazon, there's no upfront cost. But when you get the book back, you will notice which printing press it was printed on. I've seen about 4 different ones because I buy boxes of my books, maybe 25 copies at a time, because I do in-person things, and some people hate Amazon bad enough they will not buy my book on Amazon, so I mail the book to them. But you only pay Amazon when you buy your books, which is nice when you think about it. And I didn't have to pay them when I uploaded the audio. I had to pay my husband in kind and good food and taking care of him because he helped me record my audio version of my book, because he used to work at Sony Music and he knows, he's an electrical engineer and he knows enough about acoustics and recording. But you may need to pay somebody to help you get that version. But you are not laying out any money at all when you work with Amazon. That's another thing. They want to make it attractive, but boy, they do ride on your back and they do get a percentage on your sales. So when you're pricing your book, you want to remember you have a wholesale cost to you of publishing that book, and then you have a retail cost price that makes up some of that for all your the work that you did as the author and the marketer and what have you. I hope these are answers to your question. Anything else before we go? I have to make a plug, shameless publicity here. I'm learning to get more and more comfortable doing it. August 1st, we do start once again our very comprehensive 8-week course on would I, could I, should I write a memoir. And you could take the course even if you're not writing a memoir. If you were writing a novel, it's still the same metrics that memoirists have to compete with novelists for people's eyeballs. And so it's very good value for the money. I basically teach you everything I wish I knew before I started, and things you were afraid to ask or didn't know you needed to ask. The cost is reasonable. We meet for 4 Monday nights, consecutive Monday nights. Then we have a little break, and part 2 of that course, part 1 starting August 1st, part 2 starts September 19th. And again, Eastern Standard Time, it's 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Do the math, and you get all the materials, and you literally walk away after that 2-part course truly understanding whether you should make the commitment of time and money to get your book done, instead of just hoping one day you're going to write a book. Several times when we've run this course, we've also formed a group because the writers got to know each other and they liked each other, and they continued to meet online, sometimes with me facilitating, and then they were free to go off and do it themselves, to have beta readers in the group, because they met people in the course and learned that they liked the feedback that they were getting, and the person was thoughtful and helped them have those aha moments. Why didn't I see that? You need a 360-degree view on your product if it's going to be successful, not just this one view that you have of your work. Boy, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming. I know that Len wants to jump in here and do a wrap up.
Yeah, wow, Cynthia, that was so helpful. I did take, even though I told everybody they didn't have to take copious notes, I personally took copious notes. No, really, really helpful. Thank you. And I can see that it's too much to cover in an hour and 15 or 20 minutes worth of presentation. So I'm very happy that you're presenting your class, which has been extremely successful in the past. So, so thank you very much. And I'm going to put a plug in for Cynthia. I hope that you will consider her class. And also I'll put a plug in. I have a class starting on scene writing, and then we have other classes that are starting August 1st as well. So go to storycircle.org and you can look under online classes and it'll tell you the things that are happening. It also tells you the prices and so on. I also would like to, Cynthia, it was funny with the TikTok, because Story Circle Network has a new initiative that we're extremely excited about. We're launching it. I'm not even sure we've officially launched. It might be tomorrow, but it's right now, where we're going to our summer intern, who is at Bryn Mawr, a young woman, is initiating sharing our stories on TikTok. And it will also go on Instagram. And what you do is, it's very simple. You just take a short video of yourself, only 3 minutes, no more. But we're very, very interested in stories that reflect situations where you felt as if there's social justice or injustice stories. Okay, that can be as personal as, you know, sexual politics, sexual interactions that were not good, or that were wonderful. I guess that could go either way. But we didn't want to limit it by making our own definition of what that is, but we really want to open our doors to every woman. And so that's women plus, and also non-binary folks. We're extremely interested in their stories as well. But we're in a moment where I think if we could all stand up and talk about these moments that, we felt that social justice or injustice happened in our own lives, then we can help us connect to each other in a more meaningful way. Particularly, this is a women power, okay? Also, I'd like to remind you that we'll have another webinar. It's on August 17th, and it's at 6 p.m. Central. And it's with Len Goodwin, who's also one of our instructors, who will have another class starting, I think, on August 1st. And it's called Turn Journaling into Personal Essay and Memoir. That'll be very, very good. Len is a complete champ and knows what she's talking about. So I would highly recommend it. And then I also want to remind you that we have our virtual conference coming, which is on September 17th. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, presenters. We'll have four workshops plus 2 motivational speakers. It runs from 9 to 5 on September 17th. That's Central Time. And if you do an early bird special, it is only $49. The price will go up But that's a great value for your money, and it will also be recorded so you can look at it again and again. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Cynthia, one more time, so appreciate your expertise on this. I was really, really impressed with your volume of knowledge and your wonderful presentation style, by the way. Anyway, thank you all for being here, and I will be sending out this recording in the next couple of days. So just look for it in your email, and you can watch it again because there's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
So thank you all. And we're going to sit for just a minute and chat. You may stay, it's not a problem. We're just going to kind of debrief for just a second. And but we hope we'll see you at our next webinar. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to stop our recording as of now. Pause or stop.